Here's the complete story. Sometimes I wonder if the universe has a sick sense of humor. Like, what are the odds that my whole perfect life would come crashing down? Because my fiancé decided to play spiritual games with some amateur theater kid. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Back when I thought Hudson was just spiritually blocked instead of a manipulative sociopath. My family has always been gifted. Not in some weird cult way, but we see energies, we feel vibrations that other people miss. My mom, Dolores, raised me and my sister, Theodora, to trust our intuition and honor the spiritual realm. Madame Celestine had been our family's spiritual guide for 15 years, helping us navigate everything from career moves to relationship red flags. She'd never been wrong about anything, which is why I should have listened when she first met Hudson 2 years ago and got that concerned look on her face. Hudson worked at some corporate office doing spreadsheets or whatever, the kind of guy who thought crystals were just pretty rocks, and rolled his eyes whenever I mentioned Mercury retrograde. He was stable, though, and he treated me well enough. Plus, he had his own apartment and a decent car. Not exactly Prince Charming, but better than the losers I dated before. The problem was his energy. My cat would literally hiss and run away whenever he came over. Mom would get these terrible headaches after family dinners with him. Theodora always complained about feeling completely drained after spending time around us. We tried everything to cleanse whatever darkness he was carrying. I burned sage constantly, placed protective crystals all around my apartment, even bought him this expensive cleansing bracelet that he wore just to humor me. Nothing worked. If anything, the negative energy seemed to be getting stronger. I started having these horrific nightmares about our future. Twisted visions of everything going wrong. Our marriage crumbling. Our families torn apart. 3 weeks before our wedding, Mom finally said what we'd all been thinking. We needed professional intervention. Madame Celestine lived in this gorgeous suburban home filled with healing crystals, wine chimes, and spiritual artifacts she'd collected from around the world. The moment you walked through her door, you could feel this incredible positive energy washing over you. She'd been guiding me since I was 12, helping me through breakups, career decisions, even predicting I'd meet my future husband at a coffee shop 2 months before Hudson and I crossed paths. When I called about Hudson's energy problems, she immediately agreed to see us. She'd been sensing disturbances in my aura lately and was worried about me. The drive to her house felt different that day, heavier, more urgent. Hudson kept making these little sarcastic comments about wasting our time, which should have been another red flag. As we pulled into her driveway, surrounded by her beautiful garden of healing herbs and protective stones, I felt this overwhelming relief that we were finally going to get answers. Hudson looked uncomfortable the second we walked inside. The incense that usually calmed me seemed to agitate him, and I watched him fidget while Madame Celestine prepared her sacred space. I squeezed his hand, trying to help him open his heart to the healing process. But his palm was sweaty and cold. Never a good sign, spiritually. Madame Celestine emerged from her meditation room in flowing white robes, her silver hair braided with small crystals. She took one look at Hudson and gasped, actually clutched her chest like she'd been hit. Oh my... The darkness around this man is overwhelming. I felt my stomach drop. Hudson just sat there with this skeptical expression, like he was watching a bad movie instead of receiving life-changing spiritual guidance. What do you mean? I asked. Though part of me already knew, your fiancé carries terrible energy, a curse, perhaps from a past life. It will destroy your family's spiritual harmony if this union proceeds. Hudson actually snorted. Like this was some kind of joke instead of a serious spiritual emergency. Mom immediately started connecting the dots. Remember when that wine glass shattered during dinner last month? And how Whiskers always hides when he comes over. The cat hides because I accidentally stepped on his tail once, Hudson muttered. But I could see the defensive energy radiating off him. Madame Celestine began circling Hudson, waving her hands to read his aura. The wedding cannot proceed unless we perform a complete spiritual cleansing. It's extensive work. Dangerous for me personally? The ritual requires specific materials, blessed candles from Peru, purified salts from the Dead Sea, protection crystals that must be charged under 3 full moons, plus my time and energy for such intensive work, $8,500. I looked at Hudson, expecting him to understand the gravity of our situation. Instead, he had this expression like he was about to laugh. That's almost $9,000 for some candles and salt. Mom jumped in immediately. If you truly love my daughter, you wouldn't put a price on her spiritual safety. Theodora nodded. Maybe the bad energy is why you're being so resistant. The darkness doesn't want to be cleansed. They all stared at Hudson, while I felt tears building in my eyes. This was our future we were talking about. Our spiritual compatibility? And he was acting like it was some kind of scam. Please, I whispered. If you love me? That's when something shifted in Hudson's expression. He got this calculating look that I'd never seen before. You know what? You're absolutely right. Let's do the cleansing. We all stared at him in shock. I'd expected more resistance, more of his usual skepticism. But, he continued, I want to bring my own spiritual advisor too. For a second opinion, that's reasonable, right? None of us could really argue with that without looking suspicious. So we agreed. 2 days later, Hudson showed up with this guy Jerome in flowing purple robes, carrying a briefcase full of crystals and candles. Hudson introduced him as Master Aurelius, apparently some spiritual counselor who'd studied under Tibetan monks. The guy looked legitimate enough, very serious and mystical. The second Jerome walked into Madame Celestine's house. He froze. His eyes went wide, then wider, then he started backing toward the door. No, no, no. I cannot stay here. What's wrong? Mom asked, suddenly nervous. Jerome pointed at me with a shaking hand. The spiritual discord around this woman. It's catastrophic. This union will drain his life force completely within 3 years. Maybe less. I felt like I'd been slapped. That's not true. Madame Celestine? Tell him he's wrong. But here's where everything started falling apart. What could she say? If she denied it, she'd be contradicting another spiritual advisor. If she agreed, she'd be admitting I was the problem instead of Hudson. Jerome pulled out this compass that started spinning wildly. You must leave immediately, he told Hudson dramatically. Every moment you stay connected to this family damages your aura further. I've seen men reduced to empty shells by this kind of spiritual toxicity. Hudson turned to me with this devastated expression. I can't risk it. The universe has spoken through 2 advisors now. We can't fight fate, but the cleansing ritual I started won't work. Jerome interrupted. The incompatibility is too severe. It's like mixing oil and water. Separately, they're fine. Together, they're destructive. Hudson left that day and blocked me on everything, claiming his spiritual advisor had told him to cut all contact for his own protection. I was completely blindsided. 1 minute we're planning our wedding. The next minute he's acting like I'm some kind of spiritual vampire. The meltdown was immediate and epic. I texted all our mutual friends, explaining that Hudson was having some kind of breakdown and had fallen under the influence of a false prophet. When that didn't work, Mom actually drove to his office to try to reason with him. Security had to escort her out after she started burning sage in their lobby, setting off the smoke alarms and forcing the entire building to evacuate. Theodora started leaving reviews on his company's website from different accounts, warning people about the dark energy he brought to their workplace. We figured if we could make his life difficult enough, he'd realize he was making a mistake and come back. Then we found out the truth, and everything made sense in the most horrible way possible. Jerome called Madame Celestine directly. She thought he was reaching out for a professional consultation, maybe to discuss our conflicting readings. Instead, he recorded the entire conversation where she offered to split future cleansing fees 50-50 if he'd reverse his spiritual assessment of our compatibility. These people are good for at least $30,000 a year between the 3 of them, she actually said on the recording. $30,000 annually that she'd been extracting from my family through fake spiritual emergencies and manufactured crises. But it got worse. So much worse. Dad, who'd always been quiet about our spiritual practices, finally called Hudson from his office. Turns out Dad had never believed in any of it, but went along to keep peace in the family. He wanted to meet Hudson for coffee, to apologize for what we'd put him through. That's when Dad dropped the real bomb. All the money we'd given Madame Celestine over the years, the retreats, the emergency cleansings, the special ceremonies, none of it had gone where she claimed. She'd been using our spiritual dependency to fund her lifestyle. And not just her lifestyle. Dad had been tracking the money for months, suspicious about where tens of thousands of dollars had really gone. Madame Celestine and Mom weren't just spiritual advisor and client. They were lovers, had been for years. The whole spiritual guidance thing was just cover for their affair. And Dad had been unknowingly funding his wife's relationship with another woman through our family's fake spiritual emergencies. Hudson had evidence of everything. The recorded phone call about splitting cleansing fees. Bank statements showing where our money really went. Amazon receipts proving the blessed candles from Peru were just regular candles ordered online. Even photos of the Dead Sea salts that were actually just Morton's kosher salt in fancy packaging. When Hudson posted everything online, it went viral immediately. Madame Celestine's other clients started coming forward with their own stories. One guy had paid $12,000 for a generational curse removal that was supposed to save his failing business. His business went bankrupt 6 months later anyway. The IRS got involved when someone forwarded them all those bank statements, showing Madame Celestine hadn't been paying taxes on her spiritual donations. $300,000 of unreported income over 5 years. Mom tried to do damage control with a Facebook Live video, crying about how Hudson was spreading darkness and attacking divine truth. But she made the mistake of going live from Madame Celestine's house when Dad was supposed to be at a work conference. He wasn't, he was parked outside, tracking her location on her phone. He walked in during the live stream, and you could hear everything. 200 people watched in real time as my family imploded. So this is where the spiritual emergencies happen, Dad said. In her bedroom, the live cut off, but the damage was done. Dad filed for divorce immediately, using the fraud evidence to argue that Mom had stolen marital funds. His lawyer said he'd probably get the house and most of their assets since there was proof she'd given away hundreds of thousands to her affair partner under false pretenses. Mom tried to countersue, claiming Dad was spiritually abusive for not believing in her practices. Her lawyer dropped her when she insisted on bringing Madame Celestine as an expert witness, while Celestine was under federal investigation for tax fraud. Theodora picked money over loyalty, testifying against Mom in exchange for Dad not pursuing the $20,000 she'd taken for various fake emergencies over the years. She threw Mom completely under the bus, claiming she'd been brainwashed and financially manipulated. The betrayal broke something in Mom. She went on another Facebook Live from her car, ranting about ungrateful children and false prophets. She accidentally admitted to knowing Celestine was overcharging clients and taking a cut. "I deserve that money," she screamed. "Do you know how hard it is to be spiritually gifted in a materialistic world? The universe owed me. Someone recorded it." The video has almost 3 million views now. The comments are absolutely brutal. I tried reaching out to Hudson one last time. Not to apologize, because what did I have to apologize for? But to see if he knew any real spiritual advisors who could help me figure out why my life was falling apart. The energy around me felt completely chaotic, and I needed guidance from someone authentic. He told me Master Aurelius had returned to Tibet for permanent meditation. Then he blocked me again. 8 months later, I'm living in a studio apartment across town, working retail to pay rent. Mom lives with her mother now. Theodora moved to Dallas to escape the viral video shame. Dad sends me occasional updates. Apparently, Madame Celestine pled guilty to tax evasion and got 2 years probation, plus massive fines. She lost her house and now does tarot readings at the flea market between the knockoff purse stand and the fake jewelry booth. Hudson. He's dating some engineer now who thinks crystals are just rocks and calls sage hippie nonsense. She has no spiritual awareness whatsoever. No connection to the universe. No understanding of energy or vibrations. She's everything I'm not, completely closed off to the spiritual realm. But here's what really gets me, even after everything that happened. After all the evidence and the recordings and the investigations, I'm still the one everyone blames. Like I somehow orchestrated this whole mess, instead of being the biggest victim of all. I lost my fiancé, my family fell apart. My spiritual guide turned out to be a fraud. And somehow I'm the one who gets called manipulative and toxic. The truth is, I was just as deceived as Hudson was, maybe more so, since I actually believed in what we were doing. I gave my heart, my trust, and my money to people who betrayed me. But because I didn't immediately apologize and grovel, because I didn't accept responsibility for other people's lies and fraud, everyone decided I was the problem. Fine, let them think whatever they want. I know who I really am, and I know I deserve better than a spiritually closed-off fiancé who would rather trust some amateur actor than the woman he claimed to love. Hudson showed his true colors when he chose skepticism over faith, when he picked his fake guru over our relationship. I'm done trying to convince people I was just as much a victim in all this. I'm done explaining myself to people who wouldn't recognize real spiritual gifts if they smacked them in the face. And I'm definitely done caring what happens to any of them. The universe has a plan for everyone. And clearly mine doesn't include people who can't appreciate what I bring to their lives.